Welcome back to Twist of Fate, a small business podcast. Today, this episode is dedicated to the future entrepreneurs brought forth by our great universities. Today, we're going to talk about Sacramento State University, and I brought a great friend, the Executive Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the Carlsen Center, Cameron Law. Cameron, welcome to Twist of Fate.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to share a little bit about university life around innovation and entrepreneurship and inspiring those future generations of entrepreneurs and building the future of our nation. So.
That's fantastic. Now, first, let's start. Carlsen Center focuses on innovation in the Sacramento area. Maybe, one thing is it's the capital of our great state, but it doesn't necessarily have the hotbed historically of innovation that's happening right now, which I know that you've had a lot of involvement with. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the context?
Yeah, definitely. When you think of Sacramento, you don't always think of innovation and entrepreneurship. A lot of times we get the cow town or government town, but those are actually seeds for future industry if we actually look at it. And so our role at the Carlsen Center, we serve as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education and support for our community. And one of the things that we've started to see is that being at Sac State, it's not only serving students and faculty on campus, but really building this ecosystem to really foster those seeds for activity. And so we've really started to see over the last, I'd say, 5 years or so, the Sacramento ecosystem start to grow. And that takes many different forms from, capital coming in to invest in technology startups to universities like Sac State actually investing into a center for innovation and entrepreneurship to build that future out. And so I think the future of Sacramento is great around innovation and entrepreneurial activity. And one of the things that I think is going to be a key part of our future is the migration from the Bay Area to Sacramento. It's certainly been a more affordable, I don't know if it's still as affordable as it used to be, but attracted a lot of technology talent. And so I think as we continue to come out of the COVID
I go up there all the time.
Yeah, so we get to have you in, and certainly your support with the Kings Capitalize, and those are key events for driving our ecosystem forward. So,
yeah. I love what you do because an investment in our youth helps us pay it forward in the creation of multi-generational wealth. And you don't know, so Sac State, I brought my kids up there. So I have 3 toddler sons. So they've already hung out at university. And I can tell you, the student body and the culture of Sac State is just refreshing. We had pizza at the student union.
There you go.
And wow, I can tell you, walking over to the Carlsen Center, there's definitely a feeling of optimism and something new is happening. I had many of the students talk to me as a founder and as a CEO and really probe questions because they want to do it. And I just love the optimism that they think they can do it. And I think they're getting it from your program.
One of the key things is when we look at the students, they're the future of our region, right? So actually 68% of students that graduate from Sac State stay, live, and work in the region. And so inspiring them by bringing in individuals like yourself to share your entrepreneurial story where they get to learn from the trials and tribulations is a really key shift for them. And we have a really diverse population on campus. And so ensuring that the entrepreneurs that we bring in are representative of that community is a really key aspect to say, I can see myself doing this work and working through those challenges, not only as maybe a person of color, but also the challenges that come with being an entrepreneur to start. And so one of the key things that I've always found was I didn't come up through academia. I'm not a faculty member. I did get a master's, but I'm not a faculty member. And so for me, one of the key values that I was able to bring to the university was this connection to community and the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And a lot of times as students, we feel like all that we have of support is just around what we'd call the 6000 J Street. Sac State was like, that's where my resources are, but it was like, hey, we're bringing you in from the Bay Area. We're bringing in people virtually from around the world that will share their entrepreneurial experience, but also as they're growing, know that maybe I can get access to capital. Maybe I can get resources to help provide visibility to my business as I'm growing. And so I think it's that confidence in knowing that I have this support mechanism to say, I can take that, can be courageous and take that risk to start my business and move forward.
Great. So my listeners, by now they're even wondering, like, Doug, what are you now doing in Sac State? Like, first you're in hockey, and then you're in basketball. What are you doing in Sac State? Actually, Cameron invited me to what I view as like a petri dish for innovation. It's called Hive Mind. My listeners would love to know about this Hive Mind thing.
Yeah, we actually start in the fall semester working with colleges on campus. So we create what we call the on-ramps into the entrepreneurial journey through things like Global Entrepreneurship Week and college pitch competitions to create that space for a student who says, I have an idea, but I don't know if there's value to that. I don't know where I ever would go with that idea. And so we really focus on getting them to that problem solution fit. So you have an idea for something, but as an entrepreneur, you're solving a problem, right? And who are you solving that for? And so a lot of times what we find is those students and entrepreneurs start with, oh, I have the thing, and they go hunting for the problem that it solves. And so we want to give them that framework to be able to learn and see if what they have is actually viable in the market and getting that feedback as they iterate. And so one of the key things is bringing in speakers to talk through a variety of topics, and like yourself, speaking to the emotional buyer, to the rational, and to the logical. And one of the things that maps perfectly to is we teach the jobs to be done theory. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it really focuses on, we have functional, social, and emotional jobs that we're trying to fulfill as consumers. And so taking that empathetic approach to say, what is my customer doing in this situation, and how can I look at this decision-making process through their lens? And so a lot of times as an entrepreneur, you're thinking about the thing, but not about the process of how they're going to buy the thing, right? That's the last moment.
All of us entrepreneurs fall in love with our widgets, right? But the truth is we need the customer to fall in love with our widget, and their whole frame of reference, as you mentioned, is completely different. It's just different than you. That's awesome. Yeah. Let me ask you this. So the students participating in the Hive Mind, and I know you guys are listening, the diversity was really impressive. You had some international students, you had continued education like out in the wild, and then you had the undergraduate student body. But why don't you talk a little bit about what are you looking for someone to go into this Hive Mind? And what are the behavior characteristics that they may have? Because I might have some Hive Mind listeners out there.
Yeah, totally. So I think one of the key things is just that intentionality to learning, right? I think with that is you can only learn by going and actually doing the work, right? So it's not about just doing a worksheet or putting things on your business model canvas, but actually diving in to say, I have these assumptions as an entrepreneur and I need to go talk to people to get feedback. And that's where the rubber meets the road. Are they willing to do that work? And so through kind of our application process, we kind of source out who are those people that want to take those steps forward. And they've kind of already done some of that work to get to that point. And so for us, that's a really key component. And then just I think the drive to bring that to reality, I think is obviously a key thing is as entrepreneurs, that you're going to hit challenges at certain points along the road. And so are you going to be able to stick to it? And a lot of these are students who are, taking full-time course loads. And so we also, as, facilitators have to recognize that, but also continue to push them to be their best and to put their best foot forward and pushing those ideas and businesses forward. So we're always, one of the things is we're always excited to see at the end, we're like, did we get them prepared enough? And then they blow us away when they pitch their ideas because as pressure makes diamonds, right? There's like, I got a bunch.
Pipes.
Yeah,
breaks pipes.
Hey, there you go. That is true. But it's at the end, they know they're going to be presenting their business and all that they've been working towards. And so that kind of forces them to say, hey, check out my business and all the amazing work that I've done.
No, the proof is in the pudding. Actually, many of you don't know, in the 2022 Capitalized Pitch Competition, I met a Hive Mind group, right? Yeah. That was I believe they were finalists, actually. Yeah, they were in the finalist group. And maybe you could talk a little bit about them, because that is a proof point of success. Like, I was like, wow, look at these guys. They're competing versus real world entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and I think the success for me is not only that they were pitching at that stage, but the year and a half of support that got them to that point. And so I think it's a really great story around just the pivoting and really listening to your customers. And so what actually happened was one of the co-founders, Abu Becker, he came to me. He was, I still remember, I get a Calendly sign up for a call at 7:30 from a student. I'm like, man, this person's ambitious. They want to connect and learn. And so he shared with me that he wanted to create a marketplace for students to share things. And they realized the challenge of selling on Craigslist as a student, that people could rip you off, or just the danger that comes with that. And the other co-founder of now Buzzly was also working on a marketplace for what was called the Hornet Leadership Program, and they ended up meeting. And through the Carlsen Center, they used our customer discovery. They went and talked to users, being the students, and then they talked to universities and said, what would I be solving your problem with this? And that's where they now have pivoted a marketplace to a private social networking app for college campuses. And they've created that stickiness where students are coming on for the social engagement and tackling isolation that they've felt during COVID. And then they've created a communication tool for campuses that are actually meeting students where they're at on their phone and scrolling, right? And so they've solved a real need. And what that getting that kind of problem solution fit and now getting to that product market fit is now they were part of King's Capitalize. We just went to Minneapolis where they were in a national pitch competition and brought home $10,000. And now they're in the investment raising process. And so it's that work that they did to go talk to customers and users and learn from that feedback. It's not just to set out and validate that all their assumptions are true, but to listen to that feedback and say, how can I change this business to actually meet our customers and users where they want to be? So.
No, bravo, and that's Team Buzzly.
Team Buzzly, yeah.
Team Buzzly, I know you're out there. Yeah, you guys are going all the way. Now, you should be proud. I mean, even for you personally. I mean, you're very humble and modest. You have a master's degree, you're international travel, but you are an executive director. But maybe we could talk a little bit more about how you got there, because you're really at kind of like the birth of a new wave of economic activity in Sacramento. So, like, where do you identify as home? Like, where does your story start, Ken?
Home is certainly Sacramento, but I think having some global exposure really provided that perspective of what Sacramento means to me. And a lot of times we, can take for granted what's in our backyard and until you've seen that from a different lens. And so kind of a different path to how I got here, but kind of growing up, my dream was always to play professional baseball. That was, I wanted to be a baseball player, and had some early success in high school, and I was a pitcher. And
how did I
don't know.
I see the confidence, right?
So that's actually a key part of it is my senior year of high school, I ended up hurting my elbow, and I didn't have to get Tommy John surgery, but I was like just almost there to where I needed to. So I took my whole senior year off of pitching and just playing in general. And so I luckily had gotten a partial scholarship when I was a junior to go to UC Davis. And so when I went to Davis, as a 18-year-old, and you're playing with 22-year-olds, and I had been off, as a young boy, and they were certainly men. And for me, I was really met with a lack of confidence in playing. It just had been a long time, and I wasn't having the success. The challenge for me was I realized early on, okay, I'm not going to be a professional baseball player, but I always felt like I was a leader still, but I didn't have the positional power in terms of me being a good baseball player to lead the team. And so for me was this kind of identity challenge of how do I lead when I'm not the star player? And I identified with this individual. His name was Scott Heinig, and there was an award after him, and it was the best teammate and most inspirational. And that was kind of my goal going through my time at Davis while I still played, but was how can I be that best teammate and really show up for my team? And that takes many different forms, and I ended up getting that my senior year. But upon graduating was like 22 years of my life all dedicated to baseball, my hours after school, all those types of things. And so was like, who's Cameron outside of being a baseball player? And that, early on, I kind of was thinking maybe I could play in a country abroad or something of that sort. And that's kind of where Australia came to my mind. And so after graduating, I said, I'll apply to one university. If I get in, I'll move abroad. And so one of the big, for me was a risk at the time was I had been with my high school sweetheart all through college. And I was like, if I'm going to move abroad, that I'm, risking that we stay together. And for me, I felt like something I needed to do to figure out who Cameron was, and I would be the best person that I could be for her at that point. And
was she supportive, Cameron?
No, she was supportive, but it was definitely, I put challenges on that, right? Naturally moving 13,000 miles or something away. And, we're still together today and own a home and a dog and all that good stuff. But,
so things always work out in the end.
Yeah, I
right?
guess, yes. The
listeners usually need to know that.
And so,
there's hope out there.
So moving to Australia, I studied, I got my master's of business in social impact and sustainability and then international business. But
this was in Sydney?
This was in Brisbane. So I went to the University of Queensland. And so, but the big, I think, shift for me was I now had all this time and energy to devote to something outside of a sport. And so the first goal that I made, and it was in the SAC International Airport, was I'm going to commit to reading a book a month. And I know that like doesn't sound crazy, but it was like to that point I really didn't read books.
Business book?
I just was like, I'm just going to say I'm going to commit to reading a book. And what I found was I only read nonfiction because I feel like I can directly apply that knowledge. And the first book that I picked up was The Little Book That Beats the Stock Market. And so I was like, hey, I started an E-Trade account, which was practical after that. And so, I've been doing that ever since I moved to Australia. And
favorite book? Hold on, all-time favorite book?
There's a few. Well, so I think my favorite author is Simon Sinek. So Start With Why really changed my perspective. And then Leaders Eat Last. I don't know if you've read that book by him, but for me was the tie of leadership to how our brain works was like I could see where, because my personal values are love and service, where I naturally get oxytocin from serving other people and having that take place. And when maybe I'm not being fulfilled that way is because maybe I'm not being of as much service as I could be. And so those are my two probably top choices. And
Brave New World is my number one by far.
Very nice. I like that.
Kind of fitting for the times we're in, but is what it is, right?
I love it. But I think just to sum up that story was, for me, moving to Australia, I think the biggest thing outside of education and learning was really a perspective of the impact I wanted to have on the world. And that was, for me, Brisbane was a lot like Sacramento, situated along a river, really vibrant waterfront. They had river transportation. And so it was like, I experienced what I thought Sacramento could live up to be. And so, instead of just saying I'm going to stay in Brisbane for the rest of my life, I was like, how can I build this in Sacramento? And I saw the role that entrepreneurship played in doing that. And so upon moving back to Sacramento, I got plugged into the entrepreneurial ecosystem, one through working at a venture capital firm called Impact Venture Capital, which led me to running a nonprofit called Social Venture Partners of Sacramento, which we basically invested into education.
Still in existence, right?
Yeah. So one of our big events was called Fast Pitch, where we would take 20 nonprofits and help them hone their 3-minute pitch. And then at the Golden One Center, we would do a pitch event where we raised over $200,000 for the competing nonprofits and great visibility for them to kind of grow their ventures. And that part of my work there was to work with a lot of successful entrepreneurs that wanted to give back in this kind of venture capital approach to philanthropy. And so I grew this network around entrepreneurship and really this way of giving back to the community. And the opportunity presented itself at Sac State and the Carlsen Center, which had this vision, and we still have this vision, is to serve as a premier hub for regional innovation and entrepreneurship. And I was like, that's exactly what I can see myself doing. And part of that was really looking at economic development through the lens of entrepreneurship. And you mentioned that, kind of on the cutting edge in Sacramento of that, but it's also this shift is taking place nationally, and I would probably even venture to say internationally, that it's more focused on entrepreneurship-led economic development. So how do we grow our communities from within versus attracting companies to our area? And so for me, that's something that I've been really passionate about, and utilizing the the Carlsen Center as that vehicle. And so we're pretty unique as a Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Is yes, you heard about the Hive Mind and the role we play in supporting students and faculty on campus, but we also serve the broader region through partnerships with our Sacramento Metro Chamber and an accelerator for female-led technology companies called Fourth Wave to really build from within and scale companies in our community.
Which is a big deal. Good city planning, good economic planning can offset inflation. It can offset economic, lack of growth, high gas price. Because it's a tough time right now, right? It's a tough time. And I know a lot of people will maybe run to safety and security, but personally, I think there's nothing safer than growth. And in my opinion, I think small business and entrepreneurism that you're bringing to Sacramento, it's going to pay forward for the city, clearly, without a doubt.
Well, and I think one of the things too is, for me, success on campus isn't always just new business creation. One of the things we've started to look at how we talk about entrepreneurship, especially on a college campus where they typically just see the tech startup, the Mark Zuckerberg that everyone's like, do I want to be that, right? And so we started to look at entrepreneurship as the self-directed pursuit to create value for others. And when we create value for others, we empower ourselves. And it's really about this mindset of being a problem solver and seeing the opportunity within that, right? As an entrepreneur says, hey, I see these challenges, I see high gas prices, I see all these issues in our communities, but there's an opportunity to create a solution and solve that. And some of that, maybe that comes with a financial reward, but really having that impact to create change and ultimately provide a solution for maybe yourself, your community, or your region or beyond.
And the Carlsen Center partners with some great organizations in Sacramento. I mean, I'm Growth Factory, big shout out to Monique Brown and Mark Haney. Like, you work with them, but then what are some of the other organizations that help support a lot of the people that go through the programs?
Yeah, so I think when we look at entrepreneur success is how do they get from point A to B as fast as possible, and what's required is a dense network and community to support that. And so through the Carlsen Center and kind of serving as this hub of innovation and entrepreneurship, well, you can't be a hub if you don't have connecting nodes. And
absolutely.
And so
one of the things, so it's very true what you're going here, because in a lot of the webinars that I'm in, one of the things I teach is that the cardinal sin of the entrepreneur is I'll do it myself. And it could not be far from the truth. If you're going to really succeed, you have to cooperate. And I think you guys are really doing good on that. So you work with the city, you've worked with, you have obviously Sacramento State, great community. You mentioned the Kings. Is there some other ones that?
Yeah, so the Growth Factory, they're a great partner, and we see ourselves as kind of a feeder of deal flow and pipeline for them. We actually 18% of their portfolio has come through Carlsen Center programs or our partnered programs. So you can see that happening of where we're filling a need in a specific area of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. One that I mentioned was Fourth Wave, which is an accelerator for female-led technology companies. We've run 2 cohorts together where applications close here pretty soon, and with that is we've seen over $40 million raised by the founders in those cohorts. We partnered with the Sacramento Metro Chamber of Commerce through their new Metro Business Center to run a program called the Lean Innovator, which is we call it a pre-accelerator for entrepreneurs.
You introduced me to those guys.
Yeah.
Do you remember this?
Yeah. When we were at the WeWork.
We're definitely going to partner with them. Great folks over there. I have to thank you for that.
There you go. Well, that's the network doing its thing. Right?
Yeah.
So that's the value of it, right? And a couple other ones that I would highlight is we partnered on campus with the College of Continuing Education, which provides support for people outside of the traditional university setting. Mm-hmm. And we launched a certificate for innovation and entrepreneurship. And our key partner in launching that was the Sacramento Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, where they put about 12 to 15 founders through our program, many of them getting their first certificate from a university and having that business support as they grow and scale their companies. But
that's awesome.
Another great one is Startup SAC, which is kind of a key spokesperson of Laura.
Jeff.
Yep, you got it. And so it's some are more formal, some are just, hey, we support the community and building that ecosystem together. But for me is those, if we can come together and recognize, hey, we don't all have to do the same things or compete for the same dollars. If we actually come together as an alliance, we can speak a better story or a narrative about what's going on in our ecosystem and attract resources to support entrepreneurs.
Which means the entrepreneurs win,
yep,
the people win, and the communities win. So
you got it.
We all
win, win, win.
Win, win, win. There you go. Do you feel that there's any challenges for entrepreneurism that that you're seeing a lot of the newer companies go through, or any trends that you see other than, like we talked about, gas prices, inflation, interest rates? But what do you think is something that is a barrier that you guys are kind of fighting or working to overcome?
Well, I think the natural one most communities go to is capital is always a challenge. So I won't want to speak too much on that, but I think that that's always, I would be remiss if I didn't say that that's a challenge. And there's obviously ways to find that capital, so that can be done. But I think one of the things that came to mind when you were sharing that was I look mainly at the Sacramento ecosystem, and partly through a lens of the culture and identity that we've kind of been around, right? Where we've historically been built around government, which is very risk averse. And so having that built into our identity, entrepreneurship's over here, right? And so how do we bring that culture of change and risk-taking to something that's not traditionally seen that? And so one of the things, and it came from a conversation from Forward Cities, who we've partnered with. They're based out of North Carolina, and they do work called Equity for Every Entrepreneur. But one of the things they talk about is, it's one, creating accessibility in entrepreneurship. So that's the training, access to capital, those types of things. But is it approachable as well? Meaning, if I go tell my family to say, I'm starting a business, versus going and working for Caltrans and making $100,000 or something, is that really approachable to have that conversation and take that risk, right? And so how can we as a community value that risk taking and say, not diminish people that fail and don't get the entrepreneurial success, but say, hey, how do we support you in the next one, right?
That's going to be a part, right? Failure is a part of the game.
100%. So how do we pick you up and get you started on that next one is, I think, a key shift for our ecosystem to continue to grow.
As an entrepreneur, the fear of failure is what prevented me for so long even be willing to try to play the game. So I think it's really cool that you're already thinking about that, and to your point about catching them, because one thing I've learned as an entrepreneur, and there's a lot of failures and challenges along the way, but you learn from that. Right. And there's value in that. I have a mentor that's ahead of an accelerator. In one of the comments, he said that the second venture of an entrepreneur is always the best, because in the first one, that's where they fail and they learn, and then they don't make those mistakes anymore. Right. So great point. Just curious, as we move to more of the end segment here, for a lot of the students you're looking to recruit in Sacramento, what is the process for them to think about coming to the Carlsen Center? Because as you mentioned, it doesn't have to just be the undergraduate student body. Like, the continued education people are there. So what's the process to participate as a new aspiring entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways to get into our programs. I think as a student, if you're on campus, I'm located in the library, and come knock on my door, I think is typically the best thing. And the reason I actually advocate for something like that is a lot of times you might think you're somewhere in the entrepreneurial process, but based on the way we can support you, if I understand the context of where you are in that process, I can best align you with the resources. Because maybe it's not something that I even run. It's like, hey, you're too far past all the programs we run. Go to the Growth Factory, and I connect you to Monique and Mark and Rick, and now you're off to the races, right? And so what I really focus on is how do we help them navigate that as efficiently as possible. And so another key way is just, even if you're a community member, as well as a student is we have a weekly newsletter that goes out every Monday, and it's not just Carlsen Center programs, it's programs that are happening across the region, and many of them that are virtual are accessible to people from all around the globe. We have a program called the Virtual Entrepreneurship Toolkit Series, and we've had people from Brazil to Norway to Australia to plug into those programs. And so, no matter where you are, you could plug into us at some point. And so I think those would be the two main ways. I'm pretty accessible. A little hint on my LinkedIn, I do have a Calendly link, so you can sign up a time with me.
I used it.
So for me is trying to be accessible to entrepreneurs to learn where they're at in that process. But that's also for you to understand, and have the language to speak to kind of where you're at in that building. Even if it's, I just have an idea, that's great. If you're a student, hey, we have pitch competitions coming up in the fall. I'll make sure you're on my list to send that information to. And so I think that would be my recommendation. We do have an exciting thing coming our way in probably the August timeframe. We're going to be rolling out a tool called EcoMaps, which is a basically dynamic resource for entrepreneurs to come in, and you could type in, I'm a female founder looking for an accelerator, and Fourth Wave would pull up, or I'm a student and I'm looking for a regional pitch competition, and UC Davis Little Bang comes up. And so,
and that's for anybody.
And that will be anyone.
Yeah, that's
and so, the resources will be confined to the Sacramento region. But if you're, say you're in San Diego and you're like, hey, I want to move up to the valley and closer to the capital because I'm a GovTech company, I could type in resources and say, hey, how do I plug into this ecosystem? And they get that list of resources, and now it's personalized to them.
For my listeners out there that aren't the aspiring entrepreneur, but they've climbed the mountain, they're a founder, they're an investor, how can they help you? How can they help the Carlsen Center? Is there, is there a foundation? Can they donate? Can they donate their time? Like, what's the process for them to get involved?
Yeah, well, I'll throw one jargony term just because I think it's a really valuable term, is what's called entrepreneurial recycling. So it's when successful entrepreneurs give back to their community, and your community can be defined whatever that might be. It could be, I want to give back to entrepreneurs across the globe. But when we recycle that knowledge of your trials and tribulations and your successes, now that next generation of entrepreneurs can get to point A or point B quicker than maybe you did, right? Or they could maybe not make a poor decision that you had to learn from. And so that can come in support through the Carlsen Center in a variety of ways, whether that be you want a one-on-one mentor through the Hive Mind or pitch competitions, to maybe you just want to be a judge and provide feedback to entrepreneurs that are presenting. And then one of the things that we're always looking for, just like the workshop that you led, was someone who's a content expert. So maybe you're an entrepreneur that raised millions of dollars and you feel like you have a secret sauce to doing that. We'd love to bring you in and share that story. Or maybe you're a successful restaurateur who knows how to build a mom and pop restaurant into a national franchise or something of that sort. We want to share that knowledge. And so those are I think the main ways to capitalize on the knowledge aspect. We naturally are always looking for donations. We're partnered with the University Foundation. That's kind of where we're set up. But for me was, if there's a program that we have that you're particularly passionate about, or I want to just focus on students that are natural science and mathematics, we can get you plugged in to support a pitch competition or something of that sort. So it can be very curated to what they might want to engage in.
I love it. And breaking the fourth wall quite deliberately. I'm looking at my listeners, get off the bench and in the game. Whether you want to be an entrepreneur, whether you want to start a business, whether you've done it before, as you heard from Cameron, like a program like this can benefit if you contribute. So please do that. Cameron, you're a class act, my friend. I am a huge fan of first of all, what's happening in the Sacramento region. I'm a fan of your program. And as I've reached out to you, like 3 Steps Forward, my company, we want to partner. Like if we can provide assistance to the youth, to the other faculty, you let me know. We want to do that. And lastly, I'm a fan of you. I think what I took away from this conversation that I didn't know, that your twist of fate related to baseball. And I think that there's a lot of parallels to what you've experienced, where all of us want to be that, pro player, pinnacle of human perfection, but we have to deal with reality. And I think how you dealt with it is, very inspiring. To channel that energy into a new way, which is, for my final thoughts to a lot of you, I would encourage my listeners at Twist of Fate to think a lot like Cameron here, that to live up to your highest potential, that doesn't necessarily have to be your job. It doesn't necessarily have to be what you're doing now. It can be something if you take your skills, your crafts, and apply it in a new way, which is innovation in itself. So I hope that gives you a little inspiration to think about your own life, that you can go in a new direction and succeed and win. And maybe you can come hang out with me and Cameron as entrepreneurs to contribute to the growth of this ecosystem that you're creating.
Love it. Well, thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about the Sacramento ecosystem as well as my story. And for me, it was just, I love working with entrepreneurs because you're taking the risk and you're building the future both virtually and in person. And so for me, if I could ever be of service, count on me and the Carlsen Center to support you in your journey. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Cameron. If you enjoyed this episode, definitely check out our library of episodes and highlights on YouTube. You can like, subscribe, and share. You can also consider helping our podcast by joining as a Patreon patron. That gives you access to exclusive content, swag, and all kinds of interesting things. And I look forward to seeing you again on the next Twist of Fate.
Twist of Fate is hosted by Doug Younger. It's produced by John Lundvid and Matthew Brown at Ezo Creative. Moni Yu designs our graphics, and Enrique Pimentel manages our digital life. Our theme music is by Jamie Bathgate. Special thanks to all of our patrons. You can support the show by visiting patreon.com/twistoffate podcast. Thanks for listening.